Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session on the hope of civic action. My name is Shooka Bidarian. I am an environmental activist, climate reality mentor, TV presenter, producer, and a documentary maker. And today, I will be serving as the moderator for this session. Climate crisis is one of the most important challenges of our time. And it is the most serious challenge that the human civilization ever encountered. The science of climate change is clear, and we have the solutions at hand. Technology and innovations are great. But for them to be implemented, it often takes citizens educating their government officials and representatives about the best way forward, and then staying engaged to make sure that the path is followed. We need a rapid rise of local and city-level activism, growing a revolution from below. As we need to keep pressuring governments around the world, not just to come up with better and more effective climate policies, but also to ensure that these policies made are actually being implemented. So in our session today on the hope of civic action, we are going to learn more about the importance of citizens taking action. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome to the stage Niels Vermeersch. Great to have you here, please. So for those of you who haven't been able to check our website, I'm going to briefly tell you that Niels is a Belgian micronationalist and the founder of Flandrensis, I hope I'm pronouncing it properly, which is an environmental non-profit organization that focuses on climate change and Antarctica. And I'm very excited to learn more about Micronations and all that. So I'm going to start off this conversation, Niels. First of all, a very warm welcome to you, and thank you for being here with us. Can you describe, first of all, what micronations are?
Micronations are actually very small, self-declared sovereign countries, and but without any legal or official recognition. Just like I did 14 years ago, I claimed some territory, invented a name, created a flag, stamp, currencies. I asked my friends to join as a citizen. I appointed some of them as a minister. And of course, just like every micronation, we sent a letter to the United Nations to inform them about our self-declared sovereignty, but they never reacted on our letter. But they also make no objections. So that's a fun part of micronationalism. It's all about interpretation.
That's very interesting. And I remember when we had the conversation earlier, you mentioned something which I then realized as I went online and tried to Google and learn a little bit more about micronationalism and micronations, that you said many people have that impression that micronations are kind of like role-playing game or fantasy game. And there were some comments on that, actually, when I went online and looked it up. So can you talk us through that and explain why that is? And
when I'm not behind my computer with a crown on my head, leading imaginary armies or building cities, virtual worlds is not related to micronationalism. But the few times micronations appears in the media, most journalists just want to write a fancy story to entertain their readers. And there are around 400 micronations worldwide. But they will select and interview the very few, eccentric ones. The people who created the micronation for their own ego, having fancy costumes, having the medals, believing they are real kings and emperors. And that gave a very wrong impression for the majority of most micronations. Some of them only start a micronation not for their own ego, but also to earn money. For example, selling certificates with some kind of title of nobility on it, of selling passports to collectors, but even also to refugees, just to make money.
It's kind of an issue that I think we do see it everywhere. Some people just, in a way, take advantage of, certain situation or topic. We see that with even green businesses, unfortunately. Very interesting, and obviously everyone has a story. So what I think we would all like to hear from you is that why did you start your own micronation?
I think I have the most boring story of all micronations because in 2008 I found on Wikipedia an article about a micronation, and I thought, okay, that can be fun as a hobby for 2 weeks. Now we are 14 years later, and I'm here speaking on ChangeNOW. So, because of my friends, it turned a bit different.
That's very interesting. And obviously, I know you're very much engaged with different projects focusing on climate change as well. But can you tell us what projects you're working on at the moment?
Yeah. Micronationalism is mainly about creativity and freedom of mind. And most micronations are considered as hobby projects. But even as a hobby, a micronation can be a very interesting tool to develop skills and talents. For example, I had a Dutch teenager with a lot of interest in journalism, so we make him a minister of media, and he started Flandrensis Radio, Flandrensis Times. I have a Greek ambassador who is running marathons, so we give him a shirt to represent the national team of Flandrensis. I have a musician in Turkey who created the national anthem. So a micronationalism can be a very interesting tool to have a lot of fun, but sometimes a micronation can also be bigger than a normal hobby.
And I think what makes you unique is the fact that you basically created or introduced the first environmental micronationalism, and you tried to basically link this with the very important topic of climate change. Can you tell us why you did that and how, and what was the whole thought behind this?
When most people are looking at the governments who don't succeed to fulfill the promises of the Paris Accord. So more and more people are thinking, what can I do to make a difference? And micronationalists are actually very creative people, because instead of joining some environmental organization, they say, you know what, I start my own country with my own government, and I will give the good example about how the road should be for me. And there are a lot of examples of micronations by using environmentalism. For example, in Flandrensis, my own micronation, in our constitution, climate change denial is illegal, and it's forbidden for humans to enter our territory to keep the nature untouched. And because of that, we got in contact with a lot of micronations around the world who have the same mindset. And every micronation is doing something on their own way. For example, here in France, we have several micronations. The Principality of Aucant started as a parody on the neighbors, the Principality of Monaco. But together with local Martians, they created their own local currency. And you can only use that money in the village to pay for local products, so to support the local, the small chain. Then you have, for example, the Prince of Antofaglia. He is a beekeeper, and the territory of his micronation is 100% insect-friendly. And his complete economic model is inspired on the production of honey. We have also the Empire of Angelistan, and they are claiming the garbage patches in the ocean. And they are the only country in the world that hopes that their territory will disappear in the future. And if you visit their embassy, it's even forbidden to drink from plastic bottles. So, but also in other countries, also a very nice example is in Italy, Bardo. It's actually a very small farm, but also a sanctuary for unbounded animals. And in their constitution stands that humans and animals have equal rights, and on their farm and daily life, they bring that also in reality. So Micronations can be a very interesting tool to tackle environmental problems.
I see that vision of sustainability in what you said about looking at other living beings as being part of who we are and not separate from us, because I think one of the biggest issues that we have, and we talk about it in the field of sustainability, is that we always separate ourselves from the rest of the world, whether it's nature, natural resources, or other animals and living beings, and looking at them as objects and not subjects. And I think that is, for us and for me as someone in the field of sustainability, it's to try to make everyone aware and understand how interconnected we are. And we cannot look at ourselves as being apart, but like we are very much linked and interconnected. And talking about that interconnectedness, I want to take you to the whole issue and what's happening in the Arctic and Antarctica, because we know that what happens there doesn't stay there, unfortunately. The ice is melting, and melting of glaciers are going to affect us all. Doesn't matter where we live on this planet. So your micronation claimed an island in Antarctica to raise awareness about this issue. So how does it work? How do you do it? And why did you decide to raise? Obviously, it's a very important issue, but I just want to know what was your thoughts behind this?
We believe that many small actions together can make a difference. So I'm very concerned about climate change, and as a micronationalist, you need to find a territory because your country needs a territory. And I had luck that in Antarctica there's some unclaimed territory, and it's all about an interpretation. You can argue about if our claims are legal, but for us, it's not about creating a country. The message is more important. So the idea behind the claim in Antarctica and having an island untouched by humans is for us a creative way to combine the fun fact of running a micronation, but also creating awareness for climate change. And within the non-profit organization Flandrensis, we combine actually both. For example, when people want to join Flandrensis as a member, or how we call it, a citizen, they need to promise that they will respect the world, the environment, and that they will respect our ecological pillars and will bring that in daily life. So we believe that if everyone is doing in daily life very small actions, it can make a difference. And we integrate the concept of micronationalism to motivate our citizens. For example, we created a knighthood, the Order of the Melting Mountain, and it symbolizes the melting ice caps in Antarctica. And every Flandrensian citizen is, from our view, is a knight, because everyone is fighting against climate change as a modern knight. So they are a knight, and we encourage them to do very small actions, from awareness about water redemption to organizing cleanup actions, planting trees, several very small actions, and they can share their story, their ideas, proposals on our social media. And every year on Flandrensis Day, so on national holiday, we grant the honors to the citizens who were a very good example for our community. So we are using the concept of being a state to motivate our citizens. And actually it's more fun to going to a climate event, not as a member of an organization, but saying, look, I'm the ambassador of a country that is concerned about climate change. I'm here as an official representative with my fellow knights, for example, in Italy, or we donated last year our profits to our consulate in Modena, in Italy. And it's not much, 160 euros, but they say we're going to plant 160 trees around the consulate. So it's those very small actions combined, awareness about climate change and micronationalism, that is actually a very perfect match.
It's fascinating, and I truly believe in making those small changes. Whenever I give my climate talk, people often ask me, but does it really help? We need change on a bigger scale. Why would you focus on individual actions? And it's very important for people to feel empowered. And by those little actions, you feel good about who you are and how you're contributing to something. And but behind it, there's so much more, because that brings a lot of awareness, and all of a sudden you find yourself in a situation where you just want to do more. And then that's when we get the big activism and action, people coming together and trying to pressure governments to do better, which is our final goal, basically. But it all comes from those small little actions that you mentioned here. I was wondering, is it something that all micronations do, or is it something that you are now trying to encourage the rest of them to do as well? Because it's just amazing. It's what we need, encouraging individuals and starting that movement from bottom to, all the way up to the government. So is it something that you are trying to achieve all across? Or?
We are trying. Every micronation reflects the vision of its founder. And micronations can be started from various reasons. It can be a childhood project that turns out in 40 years, like Malaysia and Atlantium. Ladonia, Sweden, is an artwork. Hutt River in Australia was against the taxes of the government. Sealand, the most well-known one, is a pirate radio. So every micronation has its own background and story. But more and more, especially the past 5 years, more and more micronations are having attention for climate change and the environment. And just like the Paris Accords, 194 countries signed it, we are actually doing the same. For example, the year that President Trump withdrew the United States from the Paris Accords, there was a micronational convention in Atlanta, in the United States. There were 54 micronations, and we created our own version of climate, the Paris Accords, saying what can all micronations and all citizens do to help the climate. And 54 micronations signed that accord. We also have cooperation with other micronations in changing ideas. So environmental micronationalism is something that is booming, especially the past years. And I think that it will get more importance in the micronational community.
That's just fascinating. Best of luck with that. Before we finish this part of the session, do you have any message for our audience here today and those that are joining us online?
First, thank you all for coming here, for listening to my story. My final message will be 194 countries signed the Paris Accords, but it's a sad reality that climate change is not their #1 priority. So actually, I hope that someone here in the room is motivated to start his own micronation based on how do you see the world, how can I run my own country and make a difference. Even with very small steps, I believe that a micronation can make a difference and being the change.
Absolutely. I always say small actions taken better than big things planned. Thank you so much, everyone. Niels.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now it's time for our amazing panel, where we'll be delving into the importance of civic action by sharing with you real-life examples. So please join me in welcoming Daniela, Tejada, and William Aucant, our 2 panelists for today's discussion. Welcome. Please take a seat. That was just waiting for you, though, that's why. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It's really exciting. Last year, we had all our events were kind of hybrid. So I got to meet the wonderful William online, and it was quite exciting to be able to finally meet you in person. And Daniela, a very warm welcome to you. Obviously, your work and campaigns are amazing. So I'm going to start by asking Daniela about COUNTERSIN. And just a brief introduction, if you don't know Daniela, she is the Brand and Communications Director of at COUNTERSIN, which is a global community of people and organizations taking practical action on climate change. Daniela, can you tell us a bit more about what this organization is and what it is that you do?
Thank you, and thank you for having me, and thank you all for being here. It's very inspiring to see in ChangeNOW kind of this space where we know that we're not alone and that there is concern, but there's also a lot of action and a lot of real intention to affect change at a small and large scale. So COUNTERSIN actually is born out of that intention. How can we as individuals, knowing and being concerned about climate change, make changes that really kind of matter? Sadly, we've been made to believe for far too long that we're powerless, when in reality we have voting and consumer power that can make a huge difference, not only in our personal emissions, but also in the way that governments and markets behave. COUNTERSIN was born as a global community with the ambition of bringing 1 billion people by 2030 to take practical climate action. And by practical climate action, I don't just mean stuff that may reduce some carbon emissions that, again, kind of places a lot of responsibility on individuals, but action that has a very significant effect in influencing the way that markets and business leaders respond to the needs of the planet and of their voters and consumers. We brought a platform and an ecosystem of action platforms to not only give you the information that you need about the actions that our highest impact in influencing this change at a scale, but also in creating community and showing you that while when we're on our own, our steps feel very small, when we come together, we can add up to something much bigger than the sum of the parts.
So how would you say, obviously there are so many campaigns that you're leading, but how would you say your campaigns on practical action on climate change is different from the other NGOs and organizations?
So what differentiates us is that we're trying to build on what the climate movement has already achieved. We believe that the climate movement, particularly led by youth, has been incredibly important in raising awareness about climate change. And now we see, in fact, that climate denialism is on a downward spiral. So there is a common understanding that it's here, that it's now, and that it's frankly scaring. But what we've decided to do is we want to engage a critical mass of 1 billion people who, while concerned and aware about climate change, don't necessarily identify themselves as activists. These are people from very different backgrounds, social, cultural, in many cases economic as well, that share a common concern about climate change, but also who are influenced by their families, by their children, by their friends, and also by their passions. And so we collaborate with very ambitious organizations and powerful communities to reach people where they are. We're not, for example, going to encourage people to go vegan overnight, but rather, invite them to consider going plant-based one day for a month, every one day for a week, every month. And slowly we see that people actually, in trying these different actions, they see the benefits of them, whether health or financial, and on their own action on climate, and they're much more likely to increase their ambition and invite others to join them in that. So the idea is that we engage everyone as an all-hands-deck moment that this is, and instead of pointing fingers, we empower people to find the force within to challenge business and governments through their lifestyle choices rather than necessarily by raising their voice out in the streets, which we know not everyone feels comfortable doing.
That's amazing, and that collective action that we do need people from every level of society on this movement if we are to win the fight against the climate crisis. That's amazing. William, so you are an architect, but an activist. Like many of us here, we all have our full-time jobs and then we do the activism on the side. And a former member of the Citizens' Climate Convention. Tell us your story. How did it all start? An architect becoming an activist and making such a big difference here in France.
So the story I'm about to say, it's if you are a French citizen, it could happen to every one of you. I received one day a phone call telling me, oh, congratulations, you've been drawn by lottery to participate into la Convention Citoyenne pour le Climat and the Citizen Convention for Climate. And I thought it was a scam because I received this phone call and it was like, okay, I'm busy right now, can you call me later? And then I hung up. And then afterwards, my mother called and say, I tell her the story, and she said, what did you say about it? I said, okay, I'm busy, but I was really busy. I was busy with my kids, and said, no, I heard it on the TV or on the radio. The President, Emmanuel Macron, is looking for citizens to build measures in order to reduce emissions. I say, oh, damn. I missed this opportunity, and actually they called me 1 hour later, and
they really wanted you. It's like, I'm busy. Oh, we're
yeah, definitely.
again.
And when I received back the phone call, I say, yeah, definitely. I mean, it was like it never happened before. It was the first time it happened in France that you could, as a citizen, directly speak to the president or members of the government. So this is a big premiere, and this is the most civic experience in my entire life, and it changed everything. It was like 3 years ago I received this phone call, and it triggers in me the needs for climate action, and now I'm a politician.
I love that. Such a great story. I need to wait for my call from the president or any presidents on this planet. I will say yes the first time they give me a call. Daniela, I'm a little bit, I want to know more about the individuals you are trying to get involved in the campaigns that you're running. Who can join Countersin?
Everyone is the answer. You, myself, yourselves. We think of Countersin as an inclusive community where, again, we're not trying to point fingers at our flaws or our shortcomings, but rather empower each other to be the best that we can be. Acknowledging our own humanity and knowing that we cannot all live, free of shortcomings on the climate actions side. We truly believe that by each of us taking the actions that fit our lifestyle the best, we are still affecting change on a huge scale. So, for example, take business travel. How necessary is it to do weekly flights between London and New York? I think the pandemic showed us that actually we can hold meetings from home and cut a lot of that kind of unnecessary flight. You don't need to altogether stop going on your holidays, but you can cut down on the travel that isn't, necessary. We're not asking you to stop eating meat altogether, but reduce the consumption of meat. Because again, by doing that, you are sending a message. You're not just reducing some emissions, which of course is super important, but you are telling your markets, you're telling your local governments that your lifestyles need to be catered to, rather than markets and governments telling you how you should live. So if we, for example, cycle to work, we feel that it's not a huge thing. If our neighbor does it, and our neighborhood does it, and then our locality does it, our government will take into consideration that actually car traffic is going down. So they will probably install more or instigate more cycle pathways, and that automatically makes it easier for us to kind of take that mode of transport more easily. Or if we start purchasing electric vehicles, our local, well, on the one hand, car dealers will start to report to car manufacturers that there is an increased interest in cleaner transportation, but also a local government will see that actually there's much more electric cars in the neighborhood. We need to install more charging points, and that again is a way of facilitating this change in lifestyle, not just for ourselves, but for our communities. So the answer is everyone can join. And if you're an organization who is looking to do your part, our only requirement is to see that you have a serious ambition to tackle climate change and that you have a clear path forward to making that happen. So we do not, while we are very open to collaborating with different organizations and communities, we do not condone greenwashing. And so we make it a requirement that any organization that we partner with to reach our audience is on a clear path to net zero.
So you're saying that your audience is basically everyone. So you're targeting. So my question is, okay, everyone can join Counter-Sin. What would you say your audience is and why you're targeting those people? What are you, obviously it's a bottom-up approach, but who are you actually targeting?
For us, it's every citizen who is aware and concerned about climate change, but perhaps you don't know where to start, or you feel that your action doesn't really, feel like a great deal. When you do it on your own again, you might feel a bit small, but when you see that others are doing it, you can actually see kind of the positive effect that your action has. When you visit our platform, count-us-in.org, you can register your intention to take on one action, and that intention gets aggregated to those of thousands and millions of people all around the world. And that in itself as a number works as an incredible advocacy tool to challenge your local government or your national government to be bolder and faster, and likewise to write to the different businesses that you're concerned about their action, to show that actually citizens do care and we have voter and consumer power, and we don't need to go out to the streets and demonstrate to show that to businesses and governments.
That's wonderful. So, William, your campaign is very much citizen-based, as I would say, and I know that you've been involved in conducting and organizing many meetings for this citizens convention, which I can't say the name in French. I tried. I'm awful. I promise to improve my French for next time we're going to have a conversation. But I just want to keep us updated about what's happened and what was the result of it all since you started.
So we were like 150 citizens like me from every corner of France, including territories which are abroad, like Guyane and some of the islands. There were like 9 months of work. 1 weekend per month, and the weekend was 3 days. And we gathered all together in Paris, just close there, and worked as an assembly. And everything was taken in charge, like food, transportation, hotel, and also like that. We have only to think about the measures. The measures, the goal of the measures were like to reduce by 40% the emissions by 2030. And the convention were like divided in subgroups, and I was like, as an architect, but I was also drawn by a lot into this group, was like housing issues measures. And we could meet experts of our choice. At the beginning, we received, like we say, a slab, a big slab. For me, the slab was like, we have to have an individual and annual footprint of 11 tons of CO2. By 2050, we have to have it to 2 tons. And for me, it was like a vertigo to know that we have to go to this goal. And 9 months after, we submitted a report. So this is here.
Oh, wow.
It's a big piece of work.
Yes.
Let's say it's
Light
100.
read.
It's 100. I mean, this is 500 pages.
Oh, wow.
But the measures that were like 149, covering every field of everyday life, like less tax on trains, closure of unnecessary aerial lines, if you can take the train, and also thermal renovation of dwellings. There were like also more organic food in canteens, a malus tax if you buy heavy vehicles. Everything was a big system, and most of these measures, and this is what is amazing, because in politics you don't have like this, there was like most of the measures like 90% of consensus.
Oh, wow.
Like everyone was agreed, because like we received the same informations, we had the same goal, and at the end, 9 months of work, free of mind, every weekend, it was like, yeah, working, and after that we have to hand in, so the report, we gave it to Emmanuel Macron. And the deal at the beginning, he has to submit this. This is ready to go into the law. There was articles of law inside, and advocate helped us to write them. And his mission was to give into the assembly. But in the meantime, the measures get weakened. That's the dark side of the story.
Yeah, so because I remember I was trying to follow this. Did he succeed in at least getting some of the proposals in there to be
Yeah, last year we talked about regulation of advertising in ChangeNOW. I was invited. This is my second time here. I'm very pleased to be here again.
That's absolutely fascinating. And can you tell us maybe about the challenges you faced when you were trying to put together this amazing document and all the measures?
The first thing I thought in the middle of this convention was like, okay, we received the information, we shared the knowledge that climate is changing and we have to do something. But what will happen behind? I mean, to the 67 million of French people that are not aware of this climate change and the cause of climate change. Everyone sees in the news that forests are burning and the ice is melting, but the cause itself complicated to understand. And this experience gave the knowledge to 150 citizens, and that makes me think that maybe we have, before to take action, we have to share the same goals and same knowledge. And before that, I don't think we will go very, very fast forward. It will take some time, action by action. And sharing the knowledge, I guess, it's the first step. And not only by the kids. I mean, every citizen of every age had somehow to face the cause of climate change.
I'd also like to add to that we might not all necessarily share an understanding of the scientific cause or the root of it, but what the majority of us do share, regardless of our cultural, social background, is an inherent human need to survive, but also to protect what we love, whether that is our children, our family, our future, or the places that we cherished during our childhoods. We do share that very human emotion of surviving, but also helping future generations and like the future of the things that we love thrive. And that's also where we kind of come from. It's from a place of, what can I do to protect what I love from climate change, whatever the reason might be. So as well as having an understanding of maybe the scientific rooting for climate change and the human responsibility behind it, it's also important to share that message of it doesn't matter what you believe in or where you come from, you have the power to protect what you love. So use it.
Absolutely. Daniela, I want to know your thoughts and the whole idea behind your organization, because obviously I myself believe in bottom-up approaches and movements, especially when it comes to fighting against the climate crisis. But we do know that we also need the big change on that bigger global scale. Why do you focus on citizen approach, and why rather than trying to find a different way to make that change at a higher level, what's your reason behind focusing on solely citizens and that bottom-up approach?
Well, the first thing that we have to say is that climate change affects us all. Regardless of whether we're an individual citizen or whether we're a massive organization or a government official. So this is really an all hands on deck moment. Climate change is not discriminating anyone for any reason. And so we don't necessarily just focus on individuals. As I said, we do not aim to point fingers or place responsibility on individuals and their actions, but rather empower them to effect change at a larger scale through the way that they adopt certain lifestyle behaviors. We have seen a lot of very effective action by climate movement, by advocates in really kind of challenging governments and businesses to perform better and drive solutions. But we also see that governments and businesses being led by humans probably take a lot of defensiveness and are overwhelmed by that demand to deliver solutions. So we think that an interesting way, or like a very effective way to challenge those very governments and leaders and those systems that need to change, is by showing them that we need the change. So what a better way to drive innovation at a sort of top level than by a market dictating its needs rather than by the market dictating the needs of citizens. We think that when we as citizens act collectively, we are sending a very strong signal to businesses, to governments. France is a very good example of this. And so in taking individual action, again, we're not placing responsibility on you. We're empowering you to use that citizen and this voter and consumer power that you have to challenge businesses and governments to do better and deliver solutions at a scalable kind of at a scale.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. William, any last message or anything you would like to share with our audience?
I think from this experience of citizen convention, what you can learn is it works. I mean, when you put together people, you gave time and you pick them up, I mean, and give them mission, there's something can happen. And that's something that we could learn. I mean, citizens, when they have knowledge, time, and I would say consideration for their work, you can also participate to fight climate change, I guess.
Absolutely. Best of luck with everything. Thank you so much for your hard work and effort, and keep up the great work. Thank you, and thank you for your insights. We really enjoyed it. And now it's time for our exciting fireside chat with Memory Banda joining us remotely from Malawi. Greetings from Paris, Memory. It's an absolute pleasure to meet you.
Thank you so much, Shooka. It is so great to meet everyone in the room today.
Thank you. Memory is a human and girls' rights activist in Malawi, working to advance and promote girls' rights and their leadership. Memory, it's a pleasure to have you here. I'd like to start off our conversation today by highlighting the issue of injustice when it comes to women, girls, and climate change. As we all know, women and girls are and will continue to be more vulnerable to the effects of climate change and environmental degradation because women are often poorer, have less access to education, and are frequently excluded from decision-making processes. Memory, I know that you were so instrumental in outlawing child marriage in Malawi, which is an important topic and issue, not just in Malawi, but many countries are actually dealing with that at the moment. Could you tell us more about how you won the battle? I mean, I'm sure what you have achieved has not come easily, so I'm very keen on knowing how you did it.
Thank you so much, Shooka. And I'll just jump right back to what William and they were just discussing about collective action. And that's where the power of change comes from. I was largely involved in ensuring that as young people, we put across our voice on different issues that affect us. And when in Malawi, we had, when we saw as young people that there is a big problem of child marriage in the country, we decided to do something about it. And for me, it comes from a personal story of survival, where growing up in a community where you are not given a choice as a girl. And when you're growing up, the only available choice that is left bare for you is marriage. And as I was growing up, I thought that's okay. And not until it happened to my own sister. And that really changed the way how I looked at some of the traditions that happen in my community. And I decided that I don't want to be one of the statistics. I want to continue with my education. And that really changed the way how I looked at our traditional practices. I started questioning, why should girls be given an already made choice? Why can't she have a choice of her own? And looking back at all these scenarios that happened to young girls like myself, I thought I should rise up for myself and for all the girls around me. And when the bigger campaign came in of reviewing and changing the legal marriage age from 15 to 18, I was happy to be a part of the young voices in the country. And I read a very big campaign called I'll Marry When I Want. And through this campaign, I was able to interact with girls who have been victims of child marriage. And I was able to hear their stories and relate their stories with my sister. And I saw how big the problem was. And we took the campaign at national level. We engaged the politicians, the policy makers, and the campaign really took it took almost all people in the country. Young people were a part of it. Women were actually in forefront supporting us as young girls. And when it came to members of parliament, we had to actually convince them to think about their own daughters. What if this child being married is their daughter? what impact will it have? So we had to reason with them using the power of storytelling, and that really changed a lot of things. And it was remarkable to see the legal marriage age changed from 15 to 18. And this was actually a very big win for all the girls in my country, but not just in my country, because other countries in Africa also saw Malawi advancing the women's and girls' rights, and they were also adapting what was happening in Malawi. So the notion did not just change in Malawi, but also it became an exemplary thing across African countries. So
Wow.
it has been quite a great journey.
It's I'm so impressed you're talking about it, and I'm sitting here getting goosebumps because I'm originally from Iran, and child marriage in the least developed and disadvantaged areas is a big issue. And what you have done is just revolutionary. But it hasn't stopped there. Memory, we
Yes.
know that changing cultural norms and traditional values are hard. And you've also been working on informative discussions around sex education among adolescent girls and boys. It's mind blowing. How do you work on changing such narratives?
It's quite really challenging because as you rightly said, Shoka, that changing norms, traditions, it's a process, and it does not just happen over the right. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of convincing the people in the communities, and especially the traditional leaders, that they have to work on revising some of the gender or of the norms that actually affect the girls. And through all these processes, that the thing that I have seen that has really, really worked is using the power of storytelling to change the narratives of what it means to be a girl or what it means to be a woman in the communities. Through the stories, that's when people understand better the impact that some of these some of these negative traditional practices have a direct negative impact on women and girls' lives. And I have seen a little change throughout the process that I have been directly working on convincing the community members, most specifically the traditional leaders, to take the leading role because the traditional leaders in my culture, these are the role custodians. They're the ones who detect what is mostly not really right or wrong, but to some extent, they detect what has to be done in these communities and how some specific individuals have to be treated. So I have seen some really remarkable change where now women, through the work of different organizations, through the work of even the international organizations stepping in through funding to support the behavior change of individuals in our respective communities. And little by little, things are changing. And on issues of sexually productive health and rights, we noted that issues of child marriage, they are actually directly linked with the unavailability or inaccessibility of sexually productive health education amongst adolescents, girls and boys. And through my work, I have taken it like a very big thing that actually young people, they have to know much about their body autonomy so that they're able to make their own personal decisions about their own body, about what they want. So it's quite an empowering thing, seeing the girls standing up for their rights and defending their rights. So it begins by empowering the girls themselves, the women themselves, so that they're able to challenge what the communities deems as normal, and yet it affects the women and girls directly.
Your work is amazing, and I think for all of us activists, we know that the path we are on is not an easy one, and hardship is just part of it. Myself, I came very close to giving up on different occasions, and if I didn't have the network of people that I work with, it's just, it could be very difficult at times. And I'm sure you had that. I mean, making this
Yeah.
amazing, massive change in the country. What obstacles did you have to overcome, and how did you overcome them?
Well, I think for me, mostly, it was more of being young at the time. And I started my activism around the age of 13, and being working on the change of the legal marriage age. It was around between 15 and 18 years old. And my biggest role was actually how, like, the biggest fear that was instilled in me was like, how do I convince the people in the communities? And at the same time, changing my work also works on issues of changing the traditional, the norms that have been, valued for years and years. And how do you just wake up and start challenging that? And it was very difficult to convince the traditional leaders. And when I was going to school, I was mostly really scared. I was like, oh, what if people just, come from the bush and attack me and all that? And that really never happened. And the biggest thing that I encountered was just being intimidated by the community members, but I was able to overcome all that because I knew what I really, really wanted and where I was going. And sometimes, how it's so difficult to work with some of the politicians. You know how when you're working with the politicians, they have their own political agenda, and at the same time, as a person who's working in the civil society, the first priority is not the personal agenda, but it's about improving the lives of people in the communities. And now working with these politicians who have, first of all, it's about the personal agenda. The people, sometimes for the community, they come second. And it was so difficult to work with such kind of politicians who have this kind of mentality. So that was the biggest challenge that I encountered through my work. And but that did not stop me from continuously still going to them, ensuring that there are areas in my work. So even though as in civil society, even though we tend to meet such kind of challenges, but that's not something that can limit us from going ahead to pursue something that we want to remarkably change the lives of people in the communities so that they are better.
That's amazing. Wow. Oh, wow is all I can say. I mean, what you've been doing is just incredible, and that strength that you have in you and the determination to carry on despite all the hardship. Now, talking about child marriage, unfortunately, uh, in the 21st century, it is still a big problem in Malawi, in sub-Saharan Africa, and even in the Middle East, as I mentioned, in so many, disadvantaged areas in my own home country. What's the issue? What's behind it, and what are we missing here? Why?
Well, I think for me, like, first of all, I'd like to say, like, the government, as well as the international community, is really doing a lot of work in terms of, like, I've seen there is at least a shift. There is some changes. I've seen women, specifically the girls, they're able to, know what they want, where they're going. And this specifically has been so because of the model of putting the girls at the center of the theory of change when we are programming on issues of ending child marriage. But nonetheless, there is really, really a lot of work that needs to be done because it cannot be a work done in silo or just focusing on one component on behavior change. But also, I've seen that there is a gap where you look at the other side, where you have given the software component to the girls. They have now the knowledge. When we go to the community right now, they will tell you, oh, child marriage is really bad and all that. But then right now, when you look at, for example, in my country, you look at the structure at community level, the schools, they're not adequate to cater for the growing number of young girls who are advancing their education through secondary education. And girls, there is a need for direct investment into the girls. there is a need of provision of scholarships to the girls. So we need to look at all these components so that they complement each other rather than focusing on one component. There is a need for infrastructure in the in our communities. So this is very this will be very key to ensuring that there is some sort of complementary with software component that is being provided, but also there is need of the presence of structures to ensure that girls go to school, to ensure that girls are given vocational trainings, for instance. So that is very key. There is need for that complementary kind of work.
And obviously, activism is the topic of our conversation today. And as a young activist, what would you say is the role of young people in fostering development in their respective communities or countries?
Well, I think one thing that most young people have really missed is that they get to be scared into maneuvering into political lives or political arenas because we tend to doubt ourselves that we cannot be politically active. But I want to dismantle that kind of thinking in young people that as young as we are, everything around us is political. So we don't have to be scared in maneuvering into political activities. We need to be part of the processes of everything that is happening in our communities. We have to make sure that we are part of youth-driven agenda when they are making decisions about our countries, when they're making decisions about the future. We have to be a part of it because as young people, you are the future, and you are actually creating a generation that is also going to be very powerful if we are a part of everything that is happening right now. So we don't have to be scared of putting across our thoughts to ensure that we are part of the research teams in our countries so that we provide youth-led solutions, community-led solutions in our countries. And also, we have to be closely working with public policy makers, as well as we have to put across our opinions on policy changes and the arrive. So that is very key, so that as young people, we have to be actively involved in all the activities that are happening in our countries and be part of the research so that we know what issues are really affecting our countries and how we can be part of the solution. So it begins with being part of, engaging and researching on issues that are happening around us.
Memory, you have been doing so much, and through your organization is contributing towards the needful change in your country. And obviously, we are living in this global village. We are all part of this global community. And people like us, we need the support. How can the development partners continue to support activists like yourself?
Oh, okay, so let me begin by saying that civil society, we are like a full partner of democratization in our society today. And I cannot imagine development without civil society. We play a very big role in ensuring that development activities are happening. We are actually a biggest partner of government in solving the permanent issues that are happening. We share, it's a shared responsibility between the citizens, the civil society organizations, and the government. So it's that shared responsibility when it comes to development. And directly with my foundation for girls leadership, I continue to work on issues that I have been advocating for since the age of 13. And today, through my foundation, we are working on empowering girls and boys to ensure that they play a role as well to ensure that they're educated. And at the same time, my foundation directly works with adolescents so that they have a bigger understanding on issues of sexual reproductive health and rights, and how they can defend their rights and take a leading role in their communities so that they are, active youth participation is very key. And at the same time, my organization it empowers people, especially the adolescents, with knowledge, and so that they have a sense of purpose. And that's how actually we can raise the next generation of activists. So working directly with adolescents, I believe that that's how we can raise the next generation that is going to be powerful and change things around them, so that at a younger age, they understand that they have a responsibility for themselves and a responsibility for their community, so that they become great change makers as they are growing up. So yeah, that's what my organization does, and I'm happy that I am able to contribute to the sustainable development goals in my country in empowering young people, especially the adolescents.
Memory, it's been a pleasure to just listen to you and your absolutely amazing story. I mean, just sitting here listening to you, I am all the more inspired to go out there and do what I do. So keep up the amazing work. Best of luck with all your upcoming projects and your ongoing campaigns. We are just so happy to have you with us here. Thank you so much for your time, and I really do hope so at some point in life we get to meet in person. Everyone, Memory Banda.
Thank you. Thank you, Shooka.
And so, as you have all seen, we have the ability to rise above our limitations, and history has shown us that we have done so many times before. So if you think for a moment that we as human beings do not have the ability to rise above our limitations and do not have the will to act, what we always say at the Climate Reality Project is always remember that the will to act itself is a renewable resource. Thank you everyone for joining us today.